Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL clash of the correspondents. And on today's pod, we're looking forward to a fixture that's taking place in Gameweek 22 between a team challenging for the top four and a team who are fighting against the drop. And 12 months ago, it was roles reversed. Let me introduce you to our Newcastle correspondent, Simon Bibby. How are you, Si?
Oh, buzzing after last night's League Cup semi-final half-time victory.
This is the bit, especially with 1 week of a transfer window to go and Newcastle not short of cash. We should point out we are pre-recording this on Wednesday evening. Let me also introduce you to our West Ham correspondent, Chris Stone. How are you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good. Better than my team.
Oh, you just won. Get over it. Si, I want to get to the question that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Would you rather win that League Cup or would you rather finish top four?
League Cup. Give me a trophy this season. That's heart over head.
No, I get that. Is it difficult? Is it different because it's so long?
Yeah. Like, I haven't seen us win anything in my lifetime. I've seen us get to the Champions League. Had some great nights in the Champions League, but never seen us win anything. So I think that would take precedent. But, I was looking back at Man City and some other clubs that have been on the same sort of journey as us, and typically they go through a few tough losses before they get that first trophy win. So maybe the stars are relying this season for us to win it. But yeah, I'd say even a shot at Manchester United or Forest in the final, I'd take that this season. Top four would be fantastic, but I think we're kind of ahead of schedule on that, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly valid that you're certainly ahead of schedule. I don't think even there'd have been many Newcastle fans with all the will in the world are expecting top four this season. But do you expect to take it from here? Because most neutrals think that you will, Si.
Yeah, I think if you look at the league, and I've been saying this on Twitter for a while, I think the league has just been relatively poor this season. Apart from obviously Arsenal have improved, every other team looks like they've regressed that was in the European spots from last season. So we've just come on leaps and bounds, improved massively, coupled with the fact that a lot of teams aren't playing as well, or they're going through transition periods of their own, or they're Tottenham, just being Tottenham. And then it's kind of where we've landed where we are. I'm sure we're going to get onto the defense and how well that's been playing, but definitely surprised that we've maintained this form and improved it. And I think the last couple of weeks has been a slight, I wouldn't say disappointment, but I've kind of seen it coming in terms of the goals drying up. But what I didn't see coming was this kind of 10 clean sheets in a row that we've been rolling on.
It's madness. You haven't conceded the first half goal since game week 4.
Yeah, nuts.
Who's responsible? Is it for just specifically on the defensive for the moment? Who's responsible? Is it Eddie Howe? Is it the addition of Botman and Trippier? Because we have to remember Trippier hardly played for you last season. What's been the biggest change?
I think it starts with Howe. It always starts with the coach, but it's not even just the defense, it's the team unit. And I think that's kind of what's led to some of our issues with attacking as well, is Eddie has come up with this plan, this strategy, and this system that 1 to 11 they all buy into. They all know it. And I think what it's done is, reduce the opposition to essentially nothing. Like, 1 chance a game, 2 chances a game max. Since, as you say, like game week 4 or 5, the amount of goals that we've conceded and chances has been incredible. I think that's been at the cost of some of our attacking threat, and I think that was masked quite a lot by the form of Miggy as well, and the amount of goals that he was scoring. And now you see that he's only got 1 since we came back from the World Cup break. Wilson hasn't scored. Isak's coming back into the team and starting to look good. St. Maximin's not on the team. You've got Joelinton and Willock kind of playing that transition of swapping over from left wing and left midfield, but they can't fucking hit a barn door, those two at the moment. Although Joelinton did score yesterday. He should have scored 2
Just
there, but yeah. But there is there's definitely things to work on that department. We're creating chances, just not taking them. But Eddie being Eddie, it's drilling the team, and if the team's performing well and we're not conceding, I don't think he's going to change it for a while.
Yeah, no, really good. Chris, you were in a similar position this time last year, not quite as strong as the one that Newcastle are in now. Is there any advice you'd give to Si? I know obviously Si's seen his team in the Champions League before, but it's not been for a long time. Is there anything you feel you learned as a West Ham fan going through that process last year, from a fan perspective?
What, in terms of enjoyment, watching, or
all of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I expected it. So I guess with Newcastle, they probably didn't expect it this season. So it's almost like a bonus. And I think you have to try and enjoy that ride. It might be a bit up and down. The advantage I think Newcastle have got is they've got a little bit, probably a bit more strength in depth than we had at the time in terms of the squads. But the key comes, if you get a couple of injuries, that's when it can change. When you get into maybe the last sort of 10 to 12 games of the season, a lot of, you put 2 or 3 wins together, or you lose 2 or 3 games, and suddenly you're out of it. I think, to be fair, I think Newcastle's a bit different. I think their support's a bit different to us. So I think that helps. They do tend to support the team a bit more. And I think the fact that
they've had criticising his own now.
No, but I think where they've had such a sort of a lean time, this is the season where I think most people will enjoy it and take it for what it is. So I think that if it was maybe 2 or 3 seasons down, it might be a different story. So I think that in some ways will help the team, because naturally people will be just enjoying the fact they're up there and they're challenging and they've got something to get behind, which Si probably knows more than me. But yeah, I think it's just that keeping up that consistency. That's the key to it, because I think everyone starts dropping points. There'll be 2 or 3 teams maybe which do put a run together, and it's just if you can stop those dropping those silly points, because they soon add up, and that's what happened with us. I mean, obviously we had the Europa distraction, so I guess the parallel slightly will be, it's always difficult if you get a team that's won a trophy, like say the League Cup, because it's so early, that sometimes can have a detrimental effect on their league position, because I guess it's a different mentality after that. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, I don't know, but there's definitely seems to be drop off in a lot of teams when that happens, especially if they win that game, that Carabao Cup.
I think, I certainly remember like when Tottenham won it in 2008 and we were like mid-table, we just threw the towel in for the rest of the season, basically. I don't think that'd be the case for your team side, because there's too much at stake afterwards, and it's not like you're in the last 16 of the Europa League, or like yourselves are, Chris, last 16 of the Conference League, and knowing actually that you can go all that way in the competition. Those 7 games can become a distraction. Newcastle got the second leg against Southampton for the next league game. There's only one game that's a distraction. It's the final. And I think if it was Manchester United in the league or Manchester United in the cup final, you'd still be going hell for leather for it, wouldn't you, Si? So,
yeah, and I think unlike maybe other teams in the past that have got to cup finals, it's kind of become the main narrative for their season. I think for us, we're still at the start of this journey that we're going on with the new ownership and investment that's coming into the club. So I don't think there'll be a drop off. I mean, there has been, I'd say, like maybe a 2-3% drop off since coming back from the World Cup. Like a lot of the players aren't quite at the level that they were at before the World Cup, but that's kind of just what happens. I think the ebb and flow of a regular season. We've still been pretty bang on at it. We're just not taking our chances. But no, I think apart from the game like immediately before the League Cup final and afterwards, I think beyond that we'll just you'll see us keep like grinding out these performances and the results, and hopefully the free flowing football and goals will come back soon.
You were, Si, at the halfway stage last year on 12 points with 2 games won, 26 goals conceded, 8 goals scored. You scored 8 goals from your first 19 games last season. Chris's team's got a bit of a goal scoring problem, and they're a little bit out of trouble at the moment. What would be your advice to Chris? Because I guess you've gone through this a lot, Si, over the last 10 years or so, and you've always actually had confidence that you'll get out of it. You're not going to be down there again anytime soon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but you've also had that period where I think you were a regular European challenger and obviously slipped down into that position. Once you slip down into it, how difficult is it to just get away and get back to being a team that competes for European places?
I don't think you can compare what we went through with what West Ham as a club are in terms of ownership. I know that they've had obviously the passing of one of their, was he still the owner? Had he moved up to chairman by that point? But there's going to be some
Yeah, he was
transition.
he still had some shares, so he's still partial owner, but yeah, not
Yeah.
majority.
So you got to think that at some point there's going to be a change of ownership, whether that's someone buying his shares up or something's going to happen. I think that
We're expecting a
hopefully-
change of ownership to potentially be official in March. Is that right, Chris? Just to jump in.
Yeah, because it's all linked with the stadium. So I think I can't really. I've sort of heard so much on it, but I think with the stadium, that's the deadline that they've got with buying it and all the sort of stuff around it and things like that. So that's going to be linked in.
It's a gentleman from the Czech Republic whose name is escaping me. Is invested in the football club partially. Basically, from March he can buy the rest of the club basically if he wants to.
Yeah, he can. I mean, although I was going to say, although the gold's the people that are taken over, or say not taken over, his daughters and the son-in-law particularly is a West Ham fan. So whether or not he wants to be involved in some capacity, but I still think that will go through. I think that's always been the plan. So yeah.
Okay,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. No, I think you'll every season. Just going back to James's question, we went on a run of 7 to 8 games where we'd win more than we draw or lose, and I think I could see West Ham doing that as well. Whether that's with Moyes in charge or not, I'm kind of glad that you beat Everton actually last weekend. I'm hoping that kind of lulls you into a bit of a false sense of security, and you rock up to St James's Park and lay an egg. That would be nice. I think there's a possibility.
Suj would describe that as having the belly tickled, I think.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that is one scenario, and it might potentially be Moyes' last game if that happens. I think if you come up and you don't apply yourself, because that's one thing that you guaranteed from our teams will be right at it. And I think after potentially after we've secured that kind of League Cup final position at home as well, it could go one or two ways. There could be a bit of a lull. And we've seen that, I think, this season, like for the first opening 15, 20 minutes after a big game, the next one, because we had a run where we had a couple of games at home, it kind of can be a little bit sticky. And there's always the potential against West Ham that way.
Am I right in saying Cy Fulham was after Leicester? Have I got that right? As in the cup game?
No. After, yes, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Leicester game, in terms of the atmosphere, those who saw it on the TV would know it was quite high. Then you come to Fulham, which is not an easy game the way they've been playing. And West Ham, actually, whatever state they're in, are never easy to beat. You go through the high if you make the cup final next week. The atmosphere might just not be what it normally is for the West Ham game. Yeah, I get what you're saying there. Were you, Chris, at the game against Everton?
No, I couldn't make it in the end. But I mean, I watched the full game on Sky and stuff, but the atmosphere, even in the second half, you could tell it was still quite flat, considering you're 2-0 up. It's not what it should be.
Because you had so little with the ball, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was pockets of it. There was pockets of stuff, but you think, normally, if you're 2-0 up, there'd be a little bit more upbeatness. But I think there was an element that it's Everton and we should be beating them, and we're beating them because they're essentially in a worse state than we are, as opposed to, we're playing well. I think there's a lot of negativity as well, and I think that's down. That's at the end of the day, it's down to results. Not that you can agree a lot with Allardyce, but I think he's right on one thing. At the end of the day, performances do matter. But at the end of the day, if you get the results, if you don't get the results, then you've got a much harder job because people are naturally against you. If you're getting the results, that disquiet is less.
If I said to you tomorrow, Chris, David Moyes has been sacked, how do you feel?
I'd be disappointed if I'm honest, because I want him to do well, because he did so well at this, at the start. But it's just not. It's just something's just not working. But the problem is I don't think it's just him, because it's not. We've had this under successive managers where we've had this sort of this apathy when we play. So I don't. That's the problem. I know when people talk about who else you would get, and they start throwing all these names around, like Tuchel, and that kind of thing. And you think at the end of the day, you're not going to get that sort of manager, and the type of manager that the board will appoint won't be the sort of manager that maybe is going to take us forward in the same way as some other clubs, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I think your next appointment should be a different type of manager that fits in more with the character of more progressive footballers that you bought over the last 12 years. I mean, I've heard people say, if West Ham sacked David Moyes, then the sort of appointment they want is David Moyes. I disagree with that. I think Everton are in such a state and have got such a poor quality group of footballers at the moment that someone like David Moyes would be great for them. I think for you appoint someone in who's got fresh ideas and stuff, you start winning games quite quickly.
Yeah, the problem is I don't know that the board would do that. That's the problem. They look at someone. You look at who they've appointed in the past. No, I
get it,
and that's the issue. They'll go for someone. Even Pellegrini, they went for the reputation because it was a bit exciting, but it was a coup, and it was even that was a safe appointment to a certain degree because you had someone who as a manager had guaranteed success, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. So that's the worry.
Okay. And just thinking about Liverpool as an example, where there's a lot of talk about they're fatigued after all they went through last year. I mean, they were 2 games away from essentially completing football. The quadruple was on going into May, basically. And there's a sense now that a lot of the players are fatigued off the back of that. You also went through a very demanding football season, getting to the Europa League semi-finals and being in contention to qualify for Europe again. And to be honest, until you got to the latter stage of the Europa League, top 4 was still very much a possibility for you, sort of going into even sort of really late March, early April. Could it be that? Because I don't think anybody quite knows why West Ham are where they are. I haven't spoken to anybody who thinks, West Ham will get relegated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know anymore, if I'm honest. I couldn't say that we won't. I'm confident that we won't get relegated. There's a lot to play for, but at the moment, if things stay the same overall, then are we going to get a different result by doing the same thing? I think there's a factor. Definitely think it's a factor. I mean, I know Bowen's come out and said that he was definitely distracted, almost playing in a different way because he had that anxiety and that desire to get into the World Cup squad. So that added as a distraction. Obviously, there are other players didn't have that. I just think a lot of the players that did well last year have all regressed, or a lot have regressed at the same time. And I think that's part of it. I mean, fatigue could be, physical, mental fatigue could well be part of it. It was
we never speak about mental fatigue. That's more what I'm referring to than physical.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's a factor. But when you hear some of the things that are coming out, you hear Antonio speaking around the change of transition, it's almost like it's caused a bit of not anger, but frustration or kind of whatever with the existing players that were there before, where almost as if they're being told they're not good enough, so they're not performing, and then they're almost, the way Antonio was speaking, it's almost as if he was sort of relishing the fact that the other players coming in haven't performed and that kind of thing. So there seems to be, when you don't get results, you get all this noise and things and disharmony, and that's where it's a little bit worrying, because they're not. Before last season, there was very much a togetherness, and it's still there in bits, but it's not the same.
I thought Paqueta was a strange signing for you. It's obviously a player that we know a lot about. Yeah, he's best mates with Bruno Guimaraes, so that's where that one came from. So it's a player that I'd seen a lot of in terms of like highlights and things like that, and through the relationship he's got with Bruno. And he played in midfield against Everton, am I right? In a 2, took Souček's spot, and that was different for you.
Which is what a lot of fans have wanted in a way, because he's playing a bit further forward, and he's not an out-and-out 10. He doesn't play that way for Brazil. And I know there's a lot of players that play differently for their country to their club, but the general feeling is that he's not an out-and-out 10, and you're not getting the best out of him. And I think a lot of where that whole Souček, Paqueta and Rice, I think a lot of that is driven by Rice. because the way he is playing, he's progressively got different to maybe what it was 2 years ago, where everyone sort of put him in the defensive midfield kind of that
he's
tag.
evolved as a player.
Yeah, he's evolved. He wants to evolve, but that's almost been slightly detrimental in terms of what's going on with West Ham, because he's doing that role. I mean, he's not getting goals, he's not getting assists, so he's not contributing in that sense. Effort-wise, he's still, way up there. You couldn't fault him on that at all. But I don't know. You start thinking about anything, like you say, no one really knows what's caused it. But I don't know. Is that a factor? Because he's playing completely different to what he was 2 years ago, which is going to happen. But then that's also impacted other players like Souček. He's not the same player because he's doing a lot more defensive work. And in the early stages of when he was at West Ham, he was getting in the box a lot. He was scoring goals. He was in the positions to score goals, where that's less than it was.
Yeah, it's definitely had an impact on Souček. I think he falls under that line of player that you'd say has regressed. If you polled all West Ham fans, Chris, do you think more would want Moyes to stay or go?
I think more would want him to go than stay. I think a lot more people are getting fed up. And I suppose it's like anything, if people want something to change, because it's not. I think there's the feeling with that group of players, someone could do better in terms of results and probably performance. If you were getting the results, it would probably get you more time. But if you're not getting that and you're not having the performance, that's the problem. That's the problem Moyes has got.
So, do you see them getting out of it?
Yeah. They've got a run of games. I think just looking at the
tough next three, isn't it? Newcastle and then the two London derbies with Chelsea, Tottenham.
I don't think Moyes is going to survive that. I reckon Tottenham away, knowing how they can, they've got a good record against you at White Hart Lane, potentially with a new manager, middle of Feb.
Hold up, we beat twice at home last season. Stop that.
And then after that, they've got Forest, and they've got some winnable games. They're not going to go on an unbeaten run of 8 to 10 games and do anything in the league. But I think they'll pick up enough points, just like we did. They're worst teams in the league. That's what I always said about Newcastle. I used to come on this show being all miserable about being in a relegation scrap. I was always fairly confident that they were 3 worst teams than us in the league, and that's definitely the case with West Ham.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's spot on. I think whether you changed or not, Chris, I think you'll be all right. There's enough quality there. But I am a little bit concerned that it's calm this week. We kind of went into last weekend and it was El Sacchio and stuff. I think it literally takes, even if you lose 1-0 at Newcastle, it will just be, we've lost again. We're playing a good team. We've lost. Then if Chelsea goes wrong and then you're going into the Tottenham game, the pressure's on then, I think. So,
yeah. I think the Tottenham game's a big one in terms of performance. The performance has got to be there, regardless of the result. Well, not regardless, but if the performance isn't there against Tottenham, then if he's not gone by then, he'd be gone after that, I'm sure, because that's a massive game for, as you know, with West Ham Tottenham. And if he can't get the players up for that game, or the players aren't up for it and not performing, then that's going to raise a lot of concerns, I would say.
Yeah, agreed. How do you view Newcastle, Chris? Do you expect them to finish top 4 from here?
I think they're certainly capable of it. I mean, the thing that's in their favour is they haven't got Europe, so they've got that big advantage over a lot of teams. And Man United have been on a good run. Obviously, Man City are up there. They've not been on the best run, and then there's Arsenal. Outside of that, it's up for grabs, isn't it? No one's really. There's always one or two spots every season. One or two of those teams that you expect to be up there is not nailing it week in, week out. So if they carry on as they are, then it's certainly possible.
Listen, whichever one of the or two of the big 6 are not in the top 4, it's a failure if you're not in there, basically. Yeah. And get used to that, mate. There'll be a season that comes where you're 6th or 7th. You're like, this isn't that bad. It'll begin to feel like it, unfortunately, mate. My one concern for you, Si, and it's not a massive concern, but I actually mentioned it back in November, was the running stats were so good in terms of off the ball work. And I was so impressed when you came to our place and beat us with your off the ball work. There was just a bit concerned that the team might fatigue a bit And you said there's been a little bit of a dip at the moment, and I think people will highlight the lack of goals recently. But is there, and I don't want to say lack of effort, is that beginning to creep in a little bit of fatigue, do you think, maybe?
I was saying to some guys, I don't think it's fatigue. I think we've got, potentially got the yips in front of goal. And I thought that yesterday. And you can't expect a defence to keep a clean sheet every game, which was what we have done. But the pressure it puts on the back four is immense. And I think at some point, if it continues the way that we are with the 11 that Hal trusts and puts out, I think there will be a kind of a blip, a 1-0 defeat to a team that we should beat. And I think we've been quite lucky to avoid that. You look at the Fulham game, could it easily have gone the other way if Mitrovic didn't fuck his penalty up and slip. And that I've been saying it since really that Leeds game where it was kind of like, oh, this is a bit different. I think Leeds is an oddball case just because the way that they play and press is probably the only team in the league that's doing it more intensely than us right now. But there's definitely been some clamour for how to change it up a bit. And I think after the cup game where St Maximin and particularly Isak as well for Wilson came on and changed the game, and he's the last player that scored for us in the Premier League. I think those two will get the cup second leg. I think they'll start. I think they've done enough to start, and I think some players need a rest and be taken out of the team. But you do that, I think, at the cost of potentially clean sheets. I think it's a fascinating transit. We're almost at a transition point within the transition point of this season where we've done so well defensively that it's about kind of finding that balance. And I think that might be 1 or 2 personnel changes, and that might lead to 1 or 2 lost clean sheets coming for us, but hopefully it means we'll score more goals and win more games.
Yeah, I've spoken about, I think I only saw the latter part of your game against Southampton, but certainly the impact of St. Maximin and Isak looks like it lifted the team again when it was having a difficult moment. And certainly, I think if you put those two in the team, instantly it feels like you're more capable in front of goal. But I think you're right. The work that Joel Linton and Willock are doing on the left-hand side, and obviously Almiron defensively on the right-hand side, if you change that up, it's not the same, is it? And that has knock-on impacts for what happens in the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think we need not even a plan A and a plan B, but we need to. I think Hal's smart enough to recognise this. There are some teams now that we've kind of reached that threshold where they're gonna just sit in and see what they can get from us.
Yeah.
So we need that. I don't want to call it like a low block team. It's not even that. Like it's there are certain teams that, and I think our weakness has always been on the counter in transition. But our team structure is so good and we're so compact that we can basically nullify that. But I do think there needs to be certain games where he approaches it and the team needs to change up slightly. And for me at the moment, if we're not going to add anyone to our squad in this transfer window, it's that kind of that Longstaff spot in midfield and dropping Willock onto the right into that position, and then that frees up a spot for St Maximin on the left. And then the question is Wilson or Isak. And I think at the moment Wilson's form, there just seems to be something a bit not quite right there. Even when he came off last night, he looked like quite down on himself. There's something that's just sort of missing. I think he needs to come out of the team. Isak, it looks like he's prime now for a bit of a run. And definitely, like you saw it yesterday, like the interplay between Almiron, St Maximin and Isak, we haven't seen that yet. And I think if we're going to keep this top 4 spot and go into, kick on again into another level, I think it might be those 3 up front, because the interchangeability between the 3 is definitely what we're missing at the moment. We're a bit too predictable.
I think even Palace was a great example at the weekend of how a team is giving you more respect, if you will, and treating you differently. If you look, you've drawn 0-0 with them 3 times this season. I can't say I've seen a lot of the League Cup game, but Palace were far more adventurous. Yeah, I can believe that's why I've not watched it back. Palace were far more adventurous at St James's towards the start of the season than they were against you at home the weekend just gone. So, yeah, I think you're going to find that where teams, I spoke about this on Monday, teams are going to look at you more and start saying, well, what have you got? and will play over your overcommitment, because unfortunately on Saturday, sorry, only felt to me that you were going to score from a Kieran Trippier delivery. It didn't feel like you were going to open them up to me. Is that fair?
Yeah. I'm at the moment, this run that we're going on, this includes the West Ham game as well. I think we're starting from a 0-0 base, and it's a question of like, can we score in the first half? Because as you said, we're not going to concede in the first half. And then there's kind of 2 or 3 different phases of the game, and it's quite repetitive at the moment. We come out the blocks fast, but are kind of failing to convert our chances in the first third of the game, and then it's kind of second third is where like potentially we'll kind of let the opposition back in, and then it's let's bring St Maximin and Isak on and see if we can win it from there. And I think Howe needs to recognise, and I think he will, that some players, like, we've been on a really good run, but it's kind of time for a slight change. That it's almost as if this clean sheet run that we've gone on is a bit of a dead weight around us that we just can't change it.
It's almost becoming, in a weird way, like a burden. You'd almost be better off beating West Ham next week or Southampton in the Cup, winning 3-1, for example.
Yeah.
And just people stop talking about it. I understand what you're saying, where it becomes a psychological. I think when you're on that sort of run like you've been on defensively, it must be psychological, where you are even more determined. There's records on hand, people are going to talk about it, etc. The amount of time it's been since you conceded, I think it will play on minds even more so. And it might even be that that's the best thing for you. Like I said, it's to beat West Ham 3-1, for example, rather than another 1-0.
I don't think West Ham's the game where the record goes, to be honest. If you listen to Serge, the way he's talked about it,
I wouldn't listen to that bloke that much, mate. Chris, would you fancy yourselves to score at Newcastle? Go on then, while we're there.
Not really. I mean, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility. I think it's more, it's more down to Newcastle's defence being so good that I'm less or I'm more hesitant about West Ham scoring. I think there's a good chance, there's more than 50% chance that they will get a goal. West Ham. They'll be on a little bit. I wouldn't say they'll be on a high. That's a little bit of a stretch, but would give them a little bit of confidence winning at the weekends. Away, the support is actually quite good from West Ham normally, so I think
can't hear them from that eye at St James's, mate.
It's still louder than the
than Westfield. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Bit closer to the pitch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult.
I hadn't thought of that, so you're absolutely right. The West Ham fans will feel like they're on the touchline at St James's, right? That's good. Chris, you'd have a far better chance if Danny Ings was playing, wouldn't you?
That would help.
Brutal luck, isn't it?
It is bad luck. I mean, it was always a risk, signing someone, but to not get more than about 12 or so minutes out of him is, he's out for a month or so, apparently, and I think as well Zuma is possibly out for a similar sort of time.
Last time you come on, and you were the only person that I knew that he had a problem, and you were absolutely right.
I mean, he's got no Zuma and no Dawson now. I can't see you scoring, to be honest. I can't see it.
Nico, get that clip at the ready, pal. On the face of it, Si, I think this would probably go for the majority of listeners as well, and it's not meant any disrespect to yourself, Chris, but I guess at the moment most of us would probably would look at that game and think it's 1-2-0 to Newcastle. I'd think, I would. So Si, let's talk a little bit of FPL then. Callum Wilson owners, is that a sell then, in your opinion? And just remove United, Leeds, and potential double out of your mind. Just to Callum Wilson. Is that a sell for you now then?
Just the player alone, not looking at future fixtures or anything else?
Just not even thinking about who you're buying. Just would you have enough concern to think I need to start looking at selling him?
Yeah. I don't think there's an abundance of forwards at the moment that you want to go to, unless you're potentially looking at changing formation. But yeah, I'd say Callum Wilson is a sell.
Okay. Almiron?
Almiron, you can't. I don't think you can judge it in the context of like it's what moves you can go to. So I position myself this week that I can do Almiron to Bruno, the not the second level Bruno,
the less good Bruno, the Man
the
United
less good
one.
Bruno.
Yeah.
I can do that for free transfer. So that is
you're doing it. That's obvious.
I'm doing that. I'm going to do that. His numbers have dropped off. He was really good. He was on it against Southampton. Looked really good. The problem is he was always going to regress in terms of his goals. But at the end of the day, he's still a 6 million FPL asset. Like scoring 9 goals in like 8 games, whatever. It's not.
But it's one of them. I guess it's dangerous for people, especially those who did well and got on early with him, where they bought what was his lowest point price? Was it 5.2, 5.3? I want to say maybe. Those who bought at that price are obviously more inclined to hold than people who just got him during the unlimited period, for example, and thinking all that value is going. And there's a danger that we just revert to type where he becomes a 2-goal a season player.
Well, if you remember, I came on pre-season when he was 5.0,
and we laughed at you, Si, and you were right,
yeah,
but not immediately, by the way.
Oh, okay, all right. Not immediately. He scored game week 3 against Man City at home.
By the way, Nico deleted that clip. Yeah, but that was only because he was upset with Grealish, mate. No, listen, we did clip it at the time, and we know that you were high on Almiron. His pre-season numbers, I think he scored more in pre-season than he scored in his Newcastle career, hadn't he? So you saw it coming. Absolutely fair play to you. I think he's definitely improved massively as a footballer. His technical qualities have improved a lot. I think he's got more confidence in the sense that when he's in and around the box, you think, well, I can shoot now. Whereas I think in the past, he'd always lay it off or look for someone else and kind of take the easy option. He takes responsibility a lot more now. But I think people will be getting concerned. And I think to relate it back to what you said, if people just remove the United Leeds potential double for a moment, if people can get to Odegaard or something like that, it becomes very tempting, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's not in the top 5 midfielders in the game at the moment. So on that basis alone, yeah, he's definitely sellable. His numbers have dropped off. He's not getting as many shots in the box, not getting as many touches in the box. His chance creation has gone up. So I'm talking about, I looked at the numbers pre and post World Cup, and even actually, if you take the Leicester game out where he scored, which is the first game back, which I benched him for. So I haven't had any Almiron points all season, hilariously.
Wow. Says the guy who tits him up in pre-season.
Yeah,
I mean, you brought that up on yourself a little bit, haven't you?
I know. So if I do sell him this week, that is an invitation for Chris, I know who owns him, and everyone else to hold, because he will get points. And he will return well for a 6 million asset. It's just that there's so many good value picks at the moment that while he's out of form from a points point of view, he's still playing well. And while we've got a potential blank coming up, and you've got all these doubles for other teams, and I think the meta is going to move towards 3-5-2 if it's not already started to do that. He is expendable, and I think a lot of people will jump off. But I think there will be, and it also gives opportunity to evaluate where you want that third Newcastle asset, assuming you've got 2 defenders.
Yeah, I think it's one where if you know where you're going to go and you can get to some of the players we've mentioned, like in your case, I think that's obvious what you do, then fine. But it's West Ham at home, Bournemouth away the next 2. I wouldn't be looking at it as my biggest problem. And I can bet that Chris is going to say, I ain't selling him before West Ham.
I'll probably captain him.
What are you thinking, Chris? Are you looking for solutions, or are you in that camp where you've got good value built up in him? Where are you at?
No, I haven't got a lot of value in him, so I'd be quite willing to ship him out. Like you say, there's people like Odegaard, and then obviously when Arsenal have a double and stuff like that, that's where that will come into consideration. Yeah, so I think it's just for the next couple, it's just looking at what the other games are, what the state of your squad is, and that kind of thing. But he's probably one that is reasonably dispensable at the moment, where Newcastle aren't scoring as many as they were before. If the team was scoring a lot and he just was a bit unlucky, then I think there's other teams that are scoring. I mean, if you look at Arsenal, their attacks looking very good, isn't it? And there's a few other teams like that where you're not taking a big risk if you took him out.
Let me throw you a hypothetical, Si, and this is just before anyone gets excited, it's extremely unlikely to happen. But let's say, Southampton turn you over in the cup next week, and the Brighton fixture goes ahead in 25. And let's say, Chris, you get beat at Derby on Monday night, and the Premier League decide to put Newcastle and West Ham suddenly in 25. And you've suddenly gone from potential blank to double. And I said to you, right, buy one Newcastle attacking player, midfielder or forward now, from now to 25. Who do you invest in?
So that would be, let me just check, is it Brighton away or at home? 25?
Brighton at home. So your run would be West Ham at home, Bournemouth away, Liverpool at home, Brighton at home, and West Ham away as a part of a double. It's just a hypothetical. It's like 1% chance it could happen.
At the moment, you go triple Newcastle defence for that run.
Okay.
So I think there's not a standout player in attack. I think Isak's time is coming, and he's too talented not to get in the team. And he can play. He's a centre forward, but he can play potentially with Wilson. You saw the goal creation against Southampton came from him essentially being on the right touchline. So I think we talked about when he signed that, he was a potential threat to Almiron. That's not transpired. I don't think it is. I think he still is more of a kind of central free role type player. So I don't think Almiron's minutes are in jeopardy yet, although we are linked with a certain Evertonian.
At the time of recording, we believe, ongoing discussions for Anthony Gordon. Just quickly, what do you make of that?
Definitely an Eddie Howe type player. He seems like a young English Almiron, essentially. I don't know if that's what our team needs. I think it gives us even more control and even leans even more into what's made us successful to this point this season. But we need more goals in the team, and I don't know if he is going to bring that. But he does have a lot of qualities that I think
Eddie definitely has qualities, and I think in that kind of ended last season period where I wouldn't say Everton were revitalised but did a bit better, he carried a lot of that burden. Like, he played really well at Anfield, for example, but he's also currently not getting in an Everton team, which, with respect to the Evertonians, look disastrous at the moment. He's not going to walk into your team, is he?
No, and to be honest, I don't really know what's been going on there. I've heard he's been ill and had a few niggling injuries, and I think the transfer speculation with Chelsea must have affected him. He doesn't walk into our team, but he definitely adds a lot. Would add a lot to the squad. It's just, I know a lot of Newcastle fans aren't massively overexcited about it, and he's not. It's not
what the richest club in the world does, is it?
No, but we're also not the richest club in the world yet, because in terms of spending power, because our revenue is dog shit, and it has been for a long time. And until we improve that, unless we start doing 16-year contracts for players, which might be an option, and that A word that I think you've learned, James, you said
amortization. I know how to say it now, and there are reports since we did that pod on Juventus on Tuesday, and Suj said about like getting around it and putting length of contracts on. There was a report come out on Tuesday saying that FIFA and UEFA are now considering doing that, where the maximum amortization period would be like 5 years. You could still give like an 8-year contract, but you couldn't amortize the cost of the transfer over that period.
We just can't do it this window, is what I guess the point I'm trying to make. So I think
there's no chance of you think going in big for like a James Maddison here, for example. You don't think?
No, not in January. He's not fit, unfortunately. I mean, he would be ideal signing because he would just immediately walk into that long start spot and would, him, Bruno, and that would increase, I think, Almiron as an FPL option. I think, if I'd have come on this pod and Bruno, who had
not sure about that. I think he could, if you signed him, I think you could take Almiron's place, to be honest. I think you might find him play higher.
Could do, potentially. And Almiron could always play on the left. I mean, he is just left-footed. And one of the reasons that the problems that Almiron's had recently is, teams have drilled into now not letting him cut inside, because that's where all his goals come from. And St. Maximin's not been in the team, so he's not been able to get those sort of tap-ins at the far post. So, if St. Maximin and Isak play, I think that's potentially good for Almiron. No one has given Wilson any service since he joined the club, and I don't think that's going to change. It's just, and you saw it with Chris Wood as well. We're just not really built to supply that main sort of striker. It's not. I think Isak could just lead to the next
is that
level.
because he's got more individual ability about him?
Yeah, and he's Wilson, for whatever reason, since he's come back from the World Cup, he's not running the channels, and he's not trying to get in behind. He seems to want to take the ball and with his back to goal and kind of like lay it off. And there's something not quite right about it. And I think it's time for him to come out. And I think Isak will float into those positions which would allow Almiron and Joelinton, like he scored against Southampton, to get more centrally. So I think it just makes sense. And I think we'll see it with Southampton the second leg. And I think if he does well, could stay in the team. Like Wilson hasn't done really anything deservedly to get dropped, but you could say that about the full 11. We just need more goals and impetus in the team. I think it'll be interesting if Hal persists with the same 11 and we grind out, the second leg win against Southampton, and then if he picks the same team he did against Southampton, he's picking the same team against West Ham.
Okay.
So, and I think that will be another dogged affair, and then I think we start to have a different sort of conversation where like questions will get asked if we can't turn this goal drought around.
Okay. As you've not had Almiron all season, I presume you are on treble Newcastle defensive then, sir?
No, I've had Almiron. I got him at the World Cup.
You just didn't get any returns.
Not scored. I benched him against Leicester, and then he's not done anything for me and my team.
Oh, of course, you're sending him for Fernandes, aren't you? Sorry.
Yeah.
You
so basically, I've had 3 Newcastle defenders. Just one of them is only getting 1 point for a clean sheet instead of 4.
Who have you got with trips? Because I've got to assume you've got trips.
I don't have a platform to talk about how good Trippier is. This is my one opportunity, I think, this season.
Go on then.
I don't know if I'll be back on again, but like, fuck me. I saw your video you did for advanced tier patrons about how and why he gets like BPS. But the one thing I'd say that you didn't cover was actually like we now have this corner routine where he will take the corner but play it short, then get the ball back and whip in the cross. So like I was doing the math, and that's like 3 to 6 BPS points if it hits the Newcastle defender on the head, which it does, and then obviously if they scored, which they don't, it would be even more BPS. But like it's insane. He's just been, he's come out.
I got really nervous when I did that vid, and then who did you play next? Must have been the Fulham game, and it was I think Gomeres went to take a corner. What's going on here? And it was a routine where it just came back to Trippier anyway, which was obviously why he wasn't taking the corner. He was obviously the target of it anyway. So yeah, I mean the amount of crosses he puts into the box.
That's 25 chances created since the World Cup break, which is like
insane,
more than anyone else.
Insane. He's on course if he continues at his rate from the start of the season, which has obviously been going up massively over the last sort of 8-9 game weeks or so. But the rate he's going at, he's going to get more FPL bonus points than any player has in any Premier League season.
It's not even like the chances he's creating. I'd say like he's played better than he is at the moment in terms of goal threat and assist threat. Like he's not. He's even him. I think has dropped 2 or 3% compared to like what his previous level is. So I think there's more to come from him.
Are you holding a triple captaincy for him?
Oh no, I spunked it on Haaland last week.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Got your goal against Tottenham, didn't they?
Yeah.
Should have pressed the button. Should have pressed the button a week later. Always do it in a single, guys. Honestly. So who have you got with trips, Si? Or have you not got another one?
Botman and Almiron. So the double up's nice. I think everyone knows that Trippier's 100% effective ownership. So you need that second one. And Botman's price, it was too tempting. I actually think Scher's a better FPL option, always has been. And actually, he's been my player of the season so far. He's been absolutely incredible this year. He gets more interceptions. I think BPS wise, Botman isn't close to him for most games. He is a bit more susceptible to yellow cards. So I actually might look at the price now, but I'd say, whereas I've had Pope before, and you just never guaranteed he's going to get a save point. He's like Edison, but actually like good in goal and gets clean sheets. But you kind of want a keeper that gets
It's going to be
safe
challenged.
ones. Yeah,
I hear you. But Pope's returns have been good as well, mate.
Yeah.
I mean, he's returning every week at the moment, obviously.
Yeah,
do you think shares, if you were going in new, which I recognise most probably won't be doing that, obviously, if Newcastle obviously blank, but would you pay the extra for share over Botman or Burn at this stage if you were doing it new and you had the money available? Or would you think, I'll save it, I could use that later?
Let me just, I think it comes down to ownership. You know, if we continue to be as good for FPL defensively as we have been, I mean, Botman actually, wow, that's surprising actually. Botman's still the differential. He's only 6% owned. The share's 15% owned, which
what's Botman's price now? Is he?
Well, I think
4.5.
I think one of the reasons for that is obviously at the start of the season there was a lot of investment in share, so there'll be a lot of dead in there.
Dead teams,
where obviously there was a little bit of changing about, wasn't it? Matt Targett was playing more, so Burn was playing left-sided centre back, left back.
Yeah,
and Botman was occasionally in and out, whereas Share was always playing,
which was lovely for his price.
And Share is a bigger offensive threat generally than Botman, although they absolutely both could have returned at Selhurst Park at the weekend. But Share is remarkable. Share hasn't scored obviously since the World Cup. I don't know how that's happened. In the Leeds game alone, he had 3 or so decent chances.
We've been so bad from corners in terms of converting chances, and you know we've got 3 big lumps back there, and then you add in Joel Linton, and well, we did have Chris Wood as well for a time, but we've got so many options in there that you think at least one of them at some point will be on the end of one of those Trippier corners or crosses.
Have you got signing Manchester United defensive at the moment?
I've got Luke Shaw, so I've got Luke Shaw, Trips, Botman, Almiron, Rashfords, and I'm probably going to add Fernandez to that. So that's
so
6.
You're potentially going into 6 all outfield players. So it's not like you can bench a goalkeeper.
Well, I'd be 5 actually, because that's why I'm thinking of doing Almiron.
Oh, of course, Almiron to Fernandez. But what's your plan then? Even from the perspective of something, if you want 11 in 25, I assume Trips has no chance he's going.
No.
So would you make the call to bin Shaw or Botman, do you think, in the future? Bearing in mind, it's worth saying that it's Liverpool in 24, and I know they've had their issues, but they are obviously, if they got players back fit, they're still decent offensively. Then it could be blank. Then it could be Man City away.
Yeah, so I had a look at using that FPL team, which is a website I love. Just had a look at my
Peter.
team.
What a website,
Peter! It's fantastic. I could quite easily, I could quite easily roll out 10 plus that Botman spot, and I think it's just a case of like, is anyone really going to score like that many points that week to justify taking him out? If like we've got the potential of doubles rolling around, we've definitely not got a blank in 28. We're playing Forest away, so I'd be tempted if we're still not conceding, just go with 10. It's not worth the transfer for me at the moment. In defense, Almiron, I think you take him out.
If Sai gets there and he changes his mind and he's not got any money in the bank, can he consider Emerson? Considering that obviously if Nottingham Forest don't make the cup final, you have them at home in that game week.
Yeah, I mean he looked good against Everton. He was getting forwards and looking to shoot. But I don't know. I mean,
I've been here before, Chris, with Emerson.
Me too.
I'm not dipping back into that.
I mean, why would you pick a West Ham defender? Is my question.
If it's an enabler that you're not going to start regularly, he's 4.0, and you need it specifically to potentially cover the blank, and it's not in a Forest at home, then it's interesting, isn't it?
Forest away, not Forest away. Sorry,
Fulham away.
I'll take that.
I think the trouble with Emerson is that is he going to get a run of games? Do you know if he's going to play? And that's the problem. And you don't know when he's going to play as well as if he's going to play. So that's the biggest problem. It's all where we're having an enabler, but you want at least one enabler. You've got a reasonable chance that he's going to be in the squad, and you just don't know.
Do you think you'll stick with the back 3 you played against Everton?
I think he probably will. I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it, against Newcastle as well? But it worked. The problem is, if Zuma's injured, we haven't got 3 centre backs. Obviously, they can get someone in on loan, but then that's got to be done.
Is Kara not fit?
Yes.
Go Kara, Aguerd, and Ogbonna, no?
Yeah, he could. Yeah, Aguerd's fit.
And to be honest, if you're playing a back three, he could play Cresswell left side centre back. He could even play Ben Johnson in the back three.
Yeah, I mean, he's played there before, but yeah, I mean, there is that possibility. The problem is then, if you get one of them ones injured, then you're in a tricky position if you're playing three sort of centre backs, for want of a better word. But I think he probably will keep that. But I honestly don't know anymore what he's gonna do. I think he's so
he also might not even be the manager as well. Right?
Well, yeah, there's that as well.
Someone else might think completely different. I don't think you could go for Emerson this week. Suj wasn't completely cold on the idea though when we brought it up.
I mean, to be fair, he
sold me on him last season or early in the season. So I'm not having that.
Yeah, I'm blaming him as well. So my lips aren't even moving, but everything you're saying, I agree with. Go on, Chris. Sorry, mate.
No, so I think he did look decent. He looked better than he has done. But I made the mistake of putting him in. Looked like he was going to play here and there, just because he was cheap. But then it's still, when you need that person to come in, he ain't the man, and that's the problem.
I hear you. I'm going to presume, Chris, and not put words in your mouth, that currently you wouldn't recommend any other West Ham FPL assets.
I possibly couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to anybody.
If someone has gone in, I guess if someone took the punt on Danny Ings, that's an obvious sell. But if someone has punted on something like a Ben Rama or a Bowen because it was Everton at home at the weekend, would you be keeping or would you be looking to sell?
I'd probably be looking to sell. It's not difficult to find another option in a team that's performing well at a reasonable price. And I think as well, with the fact that the West Ham assets aren't, Ben Rama's reasonably priced, but there's plenty around that price. Bowen's at an expensive price relative. So you really want to have, you can't really afford to, I don't think. I think the risk to reward is not there. I mean, if they do perform, then what are you really going to lose? You're probably really bringing in a player that other people have got, or from a team that other people have got players in that is performing well. So I don't see any reason why you would keep them at this point. No.
I don't see any reason why you would have ended up with a West Ham player, certainly offensive one anyway. But yeah, look, I think you'll be all right, Chris. But they're obviously tough fixtures coming up, and the toughest one is the next one against Newcastle. Guys, thank you so much. Si, let's do a correct score prediction for you, mate. I realise the game is not for 10 days or so.
I'll hedge my bets and say 1-0 to Newcastle.
Chris?
What's our head or heart? I'll go with my heart. 2-1 Newcastle, obviously.
So what's your head saying? What's your
2-0 Newcastle.
Oh, see, so the only bit of your heart was, I think we'll score.
Yeah.
Like but you're still getting beat either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, difficult to look beyond you at the moment, Syed. I think 1-0, it feels like at the moment. I think even more so, a little bit like what we said, because there might be a lull after a high next week. Because there'll be a lot of people on the outside going, we're winning 1-0 anyway. It'll be such a massive deal for Newcastle fans. We know that if you win next midweek, that having West Ham on the Saturday afterwards, it might just, it's only West Ham, they're near the bottom. And actually, they're not, we're all in agreement. They're not as bad as their league position. So I wouldn't be staggered, Si, if it stayed 0-0 for a long time and something psychological becomes a bit of a problem in the game. But yeah, I think I'll go 1-0 as well, to be honest. And you do think you'll finish top 4, Si?
Yeah, I think if Howe leans into, and I think it could happen with this Southampton second leg game, if he leans into getting one or two of them or offensive players in, I think we can kick on. I think something needs to change slightly, just a tweak, whether it's one player coming in that's slightly more offensive. It's going to mean less control, probably means less clean sheets. But from a fan point of view, I think we can hold on.
Eyes on. I'm very, very impressed, Si, when I look at the league table and see that you've lost 6 fewer matches than my team, and the gap is only 3 points plus game in hand for you. I'm not quite sure how that's the case, but you've had an unbelievable season so far, mate. Well done. Right. Super stuff. Si, where can everyone follow you on the Bird app, mate?
FPL Bibs.
Good man. And yourself, Chris?
FPL_Sky Addict.
Thank you both so much. Next Thursday, no clash of the correspondents because all the cup games are out the way, and I'm going deep on the chip strategy stuff again. That's next Thursday. Should the Manchester United and Leeds double go ahead, Gary and Andy will join me for Manchester United versus Leeds clash of the correspondents either next Monday or next Tuesday, but it will only happen if the double goes ahead. Other than that, just leaves me to say thanks very much again to Si and to Chris. Cue music, please, man child.